G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in and welcome to 2023. Thank goodness 2022 is over. Tell you what, I'm looking at the year ahead and I see lots and lots of potential. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I see so much potential right now. But before we get into that, if you are enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give us a great rating and share it around with your mates. And you can follow the show on Instagram at thedysregulated.podcast. That is thedysregulated.podcast. Now, today is the 1st of January. Happy New Year's to everybody listening. And I'll tell you what, I've already kicked a bit of a goal today because I applied for a job. The first time I've applied for a new job in a very, very long time. And I'll tell you what, it's a good lesson as to why you need to look at the broader picture. And I'll explain why. So some days might feel low, but when you look at what you achieve, you realize the progress that has been made. So what I look at the moment is I see, right, what is my output? What am I achieving every day? Are there things that I'm achieving that maybe before I wasn't? Because sometimes you can get lost, you can't see the forest from the trees sort of thing. And what I mean by that is that, you might feel like you've had a few bad days in a row, but when you look at the broader picture of what you've achieved in those days, you think, hang on, I've been able to do things that, say, 3 months ago I wasn't able to do. So, for example, in this example, me applying for a job is something that I could not have done 2 months ago, 3 months ago. No chance. And yet today, the 1st of January of all days, I have been able to do it. And that is a metric that tells me that we are headed in the right direction. And as I said, you can get lost a little bit. You can't see the forest from the trees. Some of these days don't feel particularly good, but when I look back at what I've actually achieved, the real tangible evidence, I see that things are actually improving, and that is great. And today was a great example of that because I was able to apply for a new job. Now, if you've listened to this podcast and the other episodes, you'd remember I applied for another job, which I actually got. And I had this sort of OCD thing where I didn't want to explain too much about it because I thought if I said things about it, some details, it would fall over. And then ultimately it did. Now, the reason for that wasn't because my OCD was correct in predicting the future. It was because I created this self-fulfilling prophecy where I ensured that it would fall over because I put all these expectations on myself, etc., etc. You can go back and listen to those episodes. They're great episodes, and it really shows how things can go south very, very quickly. But the good thing is that we are rebounding big time. We are rebounding. But I don't want to say too much about this job because this is the first one that I've applied for in a very, very long time. And although it is a great measure of success, it's saying that we're doing the right things, I'm still a bit nervous about it all. So I'm not going to say too much, but I'll tell you what, if I do get it, you will hear all about it because I will be yelling it from the rooftop. And it is in the psychological field. This job has plenty to do with what I studied at university in my degree, and it is exactly what is a part of my meaning and purpose that I've created. So I'm sort of, fingers crossed. One good thing I will say about wanting to work in the mental health space is that, and this is a bit unfortunate as well, there are so many jobs in mental health because unfortunately there are a lot of people struggling in our community. So just remember that next time when you see some strangers on the street and stuff, just try and, be nice to each other because a lot of us are going through a lot of stuff, that's for sure. And that is evidenced by the fact that there are a lot of jobs in the mental health field. So that's really good for my career prospects, but it is another of those metrics that isn't so good and is quite telling about the state of our affairs in the community. So be nice to each other. But anyway, moving on. It's important though that I do get a new job or get more hours at least. I have returned to my old job at Bunnings. You might remember Bunnings Warehouse. For people that aren't from Australia, Google search it. It is a pillar of Australian culture. It's amazing. But at the same time, it's not really where I want to be. It was a great job during university and I still enjoy working there now. I love it, give it my all. But at the same time, as I said, my meaning and purpose is mental health, obviously. So, it is time to move on at some point and really go after our dreams, I suppose. But at the same time, another metric of success is that we are back at work. And 2 months ago, there was no way in hell I could go to work and face up to everybody, say hello and just, engage like I would want to. So the fact that I'm back at work is great, but we've got to keep at it because what I really need next, I'm going to talk about medications in a minute, but what I really need to come next is psychotherapy. I need to see a psychologist, and I need to see a psychologist regularly, because that's where the next level of my development in getting back on top is. It's in psychology, psychotherapy. And that's where most of the gains from here on in will be achieved. But psychology, as we know, costs a lot of money. And when you work 1 or 2 days a week, that is not really enough to cut the mustard, and it doesn't get you to see a psychologist. So, we need to, at the very least, if we don't get a new job, and do all that sort of stuff, what we need to do is be consistent back at Bunnings. And that is what has been happening over the last week, 2 weeks. So that's great news too. Another metric of success. I'm back at work. It wasn't that long ago I was in hospital and thought I'd never work again. And yet here we are back and applying for jobs in our chosen field. So, there's a lot of good things, I'm telling you, as we head into 2023, but I'll continue. So medications. Still haven't done my episode on tricyclic antidepressants, but that is coming. So you may remember as well, if you listen to plenty of these episodes, that I'm on a new medication that's actually a very, very old medication from the 50s and 60s called clomipramine. So it is a tricyclic antidepressant, old school, because you may remember I said old school medications, it seems, works better with people who are wired a bit differently, such as those like myself that are on the autistic spectrum. So clomipramine, old school medication, but new to me, is doing the job. It seems, so clomipramine, without going into too much detail because this will be a different episode, but clomipramine is the gold standard treatment for OCD and obsessive intrusive thoughts, which have plagued me for so long. And clomipramine is doing, I reckon it's stopping 70 to 80% of my obsessive intrusive thoughts, which is great. Now, I'm going to get into numbers here. Try and stick with me. I hope this makes sense. So, 80% of obsessive intrusive thoughts are being blocked by clomipramine. Okay. Now, 60% of the 80% that's being blocked, so there's still the 20% left over. I'll get to that in a minute. But 60% of the 80%, I don't even notice that they come into my brain and go away. Clomipramine does the job. They don't even enter consciousness. How good is that? And that's the thing. I'm comparing how many obsessive intrusive thoughts I had, say, 2 months ago before clomipramine, and then comparing it to now. My rough estimation is 70 to 80% of my total obsessive intrusive thoughts. I told you it gets a bit wordy. Stick with me and numbery. 70 to 80% of those obsessive intrusive thoughts seem to be blocked. That's how much of a reduction that we've had. 60% now of the 80%, I don't even notice. They don't even enter consciousness. Now, the remaining 40% of the 80% do reach consciousness, okay? So there's still 40% of the 80% that aren't a problem, still reach consciousness, but I'm able to swiftly swat them away like flies, boom, just swat it away. Oh, I hope that makes sense. But the remaining 20% of the total are still getting through, and they are the most difficult ones, and it sort of makes sense that they would be the ones that stick through. They're the strongest ones that have got the most backing, the ones that hurt the most. 20% are still getting through. So to me, it feels like, as far as the medication mix is going, something is missing, because the clomipramine is doing a good job, but I just feel like it needs a helping hand. And I think that helping hand comes in the form of a mood stabilizer called lamotrigine, which I've mentioned before on this show, probably 40 episodes ago, how I really wanted to go on lamotrigine, because all the research I've done seems to suggest that lamotrigine is the right fit for me. Now, I'm going to present my case to my GP and see if we can get prescribed lamotrigine, because I really want to avoid this year going back to hospital. I do not want to go back to hospital. And I think my GP and I can work together to come up with the right medication mix without having to go back to Maitland Private. That's what I'm hoping. And I think lamotrigine, the mood stabilizer, is the missing piece of the puzzle, because I don't just have OCD. We know I've got all these different things: Asperger's, high functioning autism, there's ADHD, there's social anxiety, generalized anxiety. There's more than that too. There's heaps of stuff. And I think lamotrigine will cover the ones that maybe aren't quite getting improvement from the clomipramine. Clomipramine is a very complex medication, and the episode I do on it will explain that really well. It's got a lot more moving parts to it than an SSRI like sertraline or an SNRI like venlafaxine. There's just more stuff to it. It's like a 3-in-1. But I've got like 9 diagnoses or something, and I just don't think clomipramine, I think it's spreading itself a bit short across the wide, broad array of diagnoses that I have, and behaviours and cognitions and thoughts and emotions, etc. So I think it needs a helping hand, and I think something like lamotrigine will do the job, but stay posted. That is one of my little goals for next week. I'm going to see my GP and we're going to see what we come up with. Now this year, moving on from medications, which is one of my favourite discussions, but let's move on from that discussion point. This year coming up, 2023, is all about, for me, building habits and routines. Now, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to... Okay, I did an episode this time last year called New Year, New Me. Now, if you listen to that episode, I've achieved just about nothing of the things that I mentioned in that episode, that I put out there and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm so excited. Oh, I'm going to smash it. You just wait. And what happened? That didn't happen because I said too much. Because talk is cheap, especially when it comes to mental health. Talk is important, but action is just as important, more important. Action speaks louder than words. So I don't want to say too much. But routine and habit building, that's what it's all about. And it's so important for people with ADHD in particular, and those on the autistic spectrum, but really everybody. Habits and routines, that's what builds a life worth living. They're the building blocks every day, the same habits, same routines. That's the stuff that builds a life worth living. So, and it's something that I've lacked for a long time. Habits, I've got a lot of bad habits, but I don't have as many good habits. And routines, well, my routine is not having a routine. So let's change that. And I'm telling you, behind the scenes, I'm going to let you know when I start ticking these boxes, but efforts are being made. For example, the gym, right? I'm back at the gym, and that is one habit that has returned big time. I'm there just about every day, which is exactly what I'm aiming for. That is great, and I'll tell you what, I'm so thankful for that, and it has made such an improvement to my life. And that's just one of those building blocks that I'm talking about. Now, the key moving into 2023 is that we need to add a few more habits and routines to our plate. We can handle more. I've got broad shoulders. I'd like to think I've got broad shoulders. I can handle more. I can carry more. Let's do it, Let's stop talking about it. Let's start doing. And, some things, for example, that I'd like to do just briefly, I'd like to exercise more. So, swimming, get back into running. I used to run marathons and stuff. Let's get those endorphins flowing and the dopamine. Let's get back into some of those exercises. Some morning and night routines would be good too. And I want to continue with something that I have improved, my sleep-wake cycles, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. And I'll tell you what, something else that would really help is a new job to build a life around, because if I can get some consistent work in a field that really engages me, that is like the core routine structure that I need in my life. Oh my goodness, wish me luck, everybody. I'll tell you how I go. All right, so just about to finish up, but I just want to say, never before have I stood at the start line of a new year and felt as much potential as I do with this one, because we know what we need to do. It has been drummed into us over and over and over again. I know exactly what needs to happen. Now is the time to do it. It is ours for the taking. And when I say ours, I mean all of us. This year, it's our year, baby. It is our year. Let's go. All right, fingers crossed. I really hope that, I can pull this off, because I'll tell you what, it's all there. The potential's there. Let's get stuck into it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Welcome to 2023, and I can't wait to take you on the journey with me. Thank you, as always, for listening, and I'll see you next time here on the Dysregulated podcast.